Most of the cars rolling into my bay these days aren't dying of old age. They're being killed slowly, on purpose, by features the factory bolted in and never told you the truth about. After more than 20 years under the hood and somewhere north of 3,000 cars, I can tell you the pattern doesn't lie. The old stuff you kept simple is still running down the road. The new improvements are the money pits. And none of it is your fault. You got handed all of it and told it was progress. So over the next few minutes, I'm going to count down 10 of them, all the way to the one I hate most. Here's the part that'll get you. Number one isn't some expensive part buried deep in the engine. It's a button you press every single morning without even thinking about it. One that costs you nothing to shut off and quietly runs up a bill you never see coming. Get these 10 right, and there's no reason a paid-off Camry, Accord, or F-150 can't roll past 2, even 300,000 miles, instead of shoving you toward a car payment you never wanted on a fixed income. Let's start at number 10. Number 10, the touch screen that buries everything. Somewhere along the way, the car makers took every control you used to reach for without looking and buried it inside a screen. Temperature, fan speed, defrost, sometimes even the mirrors. All of it now lives 3 menus deep on a piece of glass. That's not just annoying. That's your eyes leaving the road while you're moving, on a screen that lags when it's cold. And here's the part they really don't advertise. When that screen or the module behind it fails, you don't lose a radio. You can lose your heat, your defrost, your climate control, all at once, because it's all routed through one computer. Here's what they won't say out loud. A screen didn't go in there for you. A dash full of real switches and little motors costs money to build. One screen is one part, and it looks modern under the showroom lights. That's the whole story. Think about the last time you turned the heat down on a cold morning in an older Accord or a Mazda. Your hand found the knob and turned it, and your eyes never left the road. That's 50 years of muscle memory the new dash just throws away. The fix starts before you ever buy. Plenty of Toyotas and Mazdas still kept real climate knobs, and that's worth holding out for. If you're already living with a screen, set your climate before you put it in drive, not at 40 miles an hour. And know what you're sitting on. A knob is a few dollar part, but a failed screen or climate module out of warranty runs somewhere between $700 and $1,500 to put right. And don't let a piece of glass be the reason you give up a car that still runs. Number 9, run flat tires and the missing spare. Run flat tires have thick, reinforced sidewalls so they can limp along for a few miles after they lose air. Sounds handy until you feel what that stiffness does. It rides hard, it wears faster, and it pounds your suspension bushings and struts far sooner than a normal tire ever would. Then there's the second half of the trick. On a lot of these cars, the factory deleted the spare tire and the jack entirely because the run flat was supposed to make them unnecessary. Here's what they're not telling you. Pulling the spare out of the trunk wasn't done to help you. A missing spare drops weight, and less weight nudges the fuel economy number on the window sticker in the right direction. That number sells cars. You just inherited the trade-off. Picture 2 of the same crossover. Same year, same miles. One still on factory-run flats. The other one had regular tires put on and a compact spare tossed in the trunk. The run flat owner is buying tires sooner, paying more per corner, and the day a sidewall finally lets go on the highway, there's no spare and no jack, so it's a tow. The other one plugs a nail in his own driveway and drives to work. The fix is easy, and you make it the day those run flats wear out. Switch to good conventional tires and put a compact spare, a jack, and a plug kit with a small 12-volt compressor back in the trunk. A set of run flats will run you somewhere around $900 to $1,400, and conventional tires that ride better cost noticeably less. The spare and the tools are pocket change next to a highway tow and a single dealer tire. Number 8. The electronic parking brake. The old parking brake was a lever and a cable. Simple, cheap, and it lasted the entire life of the car without a second thought. They replaced it with a little electric motor on each rear caliper, plus actuators, sensors, and a control module deciding when to grab and let go. When one of those actuator motors or that module gives up, the brake can seize on and refuse to release, or throw a warning and lock you out. And here's the kicker for anyone who does their own work. A rear brake job on these now needs a scan tool to pull the caliper pistons back into service mode. You can't just wind them in by hand anymore. Here's what nobody at the counter will admit. Not one bit of this made the car more reliable. It cleared some space on the console and gave them a feature to point at. That's it. I've watched this pattern play out for years now. The cable brake on a 20-year-old Silverado still works exactly like it did new. The electronic ones start throwing service warnings and seizing calipers long before the rest of the truck is worn out. And it's almost never the pads. It's the motors and the module. The fix, if you've got one, is to have the rear brakes serviced by someone with the right scan tool, so it goes into service mode properly instead of someone forcing those pistons and wrecking something. And if you're shopping, know which models held onto a real handbrake or a simple foot pedal, because that failed actuator motor is $400 to $700 a side, and the control module can run $600 to $1,100 to replace a cable that used to cost a few dollars. And if a brake motor sounds like a bitter pill, wait until you hear what they did to the one fluid that used to be routine maintenance, the one they now swear up and down you never have to touch again. Number 7. The lifetime fluid that was never meant to last. Your transmission fluid does real work. It carries the hydraulic pressure that shifts the gears, it pulls heat out, and it lubricates the clutch packs and bearings that do the shifting. It also wears out. Heat cooks it, clutch material fills it up, and over the miles, it loses the properties that protect everything it touches. So what did they do? On a lot of newer cars, they sealed the transmission shut. No dipstick, no easy way to check it, and a sticker calling the fluid lifetime or filled for life. Here's the truth they're counting on you not to catch. Lifetime means the life of the warranty, not the life you're hoping to get. Sealing it and calling it lifetime keeps you from ever touching it and gets the car safely out of warranty long before that fluid finally gives up and takes the transmission with it. I had a retired bookkeeper bring in a Honda Pilot around 130,000 miles, slipping on the upshift. She'd never touched the fluid because the book told her she never had to. We dropped the pan, and it came out near black and smelling burnt. She was looking at a rebuild, $2,800 to $4,500, a drain and fill every 50 to 60,000 miles at $150 to $300 would have kept her out of that chair. So here's the fix, and it's an easy one. Ignore the word lifetime. Have the fluid drained and refilled with the exact factory spec fluid every 50 to 60,000 miles, sealed transmission or not. Any decent independent shop can do it, and it's the cheapest insurance on the whole car. At least a transmission gives you a warning, a slip, a shudder, a burnt smell. The next one chokes your engine from the inside with no warning at all, and it's baked right into the way the fuel gets delivered. Number 6. Direct injection and the carbon. It bakes on. Direct injection sprays fuel at high pressure straight into the cylinder. It's good for power and good for mileage, and that's exactly why the car makers love it. But there's a catch they don't put on the sticker. On the old port injection engines, fuel sprayed across the back of the intake valves every cycle and kept them washed clean. On a pure direct injection engine, that fuel never touches the valves anymore. So what coats them instead is oil vapor, drifting up from the crankcase and baking onto valves running red hot. Over the miles, it turns into hard carbon, thick as a crust. That carbon strangles the airflow into your cylinders. You get a rough idle, misfires, a soft, gutless feel. And in the worst cases, the carbon insulates a valve until it overheats, and a valve head can let go right into the cylinder. Here's what they'll never admit. Direct injection didn't go in to make your engine last, it went in to hit emissions and mileage numbers. And the known fix, a second set of port injectors, got skipped on a lot of engines to save a few dollars. Pull the intake off one of these past 100,000 miles, and you'll see it for yourself. The back of every intake valve looks like there's a charcoal briquette stuck to it. Scrape it, and it's baked on like tar. That's airflow your engine will never get back until somebody physically cleans it off. The fix comes in two parts. First, keep the oil vapor down. Change your oil on time with the correct grade, and know whether your engine is pure direct injection or one of the smarter dual injection setups like Toyota's, which stays much cleaner. Second, the actual cleanup, a walnut shell blasting of the intake valves every 60 to 100,000 miles, around $500 to $800, restores the airflow. Let it go, and you're into head and valve work at $200 to $3,500, or a dropped valve that takes the whole engine. Carbon at least builds up slow. The next one can let go all at once, and it's the engine they shrank down on purpose just to pass a test. Number 5, the tiny turbo doing a big engine's job. The car makers shrank the engines. A Turbo 4 where a V6 used to sit, a Turbo 3 where a 4 used to be, all to look good on a fuel economy test. Then they strapped on a turbo to claw the power back. Now that little engine lives under constant boost and constant heat, doing work it was never sized to do. It's the definition of a lawnmower engine with a turbo. And on these turbocharged direct injection engines, there's a violent failure called low-speed pre-ignition. Under low RPM and high load, climbing a grade or merging onto the highway, the mixture can ignite early and hard, a super knock spike that can crack a piston or a ring land in a single event. Here's the part that should make your blood boil. That tiny engine exists to pass a government fuel economy test cycle, not to serve you. It looks efficient in the lab and on the window sticker, then works itself to death out in the real world where you actually drive. Line up two of the same mid-size crossover at 120,000 miles. One has the older naturally aspirated V6, boring, heavy on gas, still running like new. The other has the Turbo 4, heat-soaked with a whining turbo, and if it ever caught a bad pre-ignition event, a piston with a hole in it. Same job, one built to last, one built to pass a test. Drop a comment below, I read every one of them. What's the last car you owned with a real, honest engine, no turbo, no tricks, that just flat out refused to quit? If you own one of these turbos, protect it. Run the exact oil spec with the current pre-ignition protection, the one rated API SP. Change it on time, and don't lug the engine in a high gear under load. Downshift on the grades and let it breathe. A turbo replacement down the road runs $1,500 to $2,500. A pre-ignition event that grenades the bottom end is $5,000 to $7,000, and that's the kind of bill that ends a car. And if a turbo working too hard worries you, the next one is a part most owners don't even know is spinning inside their engine, sitting in the oil, quietly coming apart. Number 4, the timing belt that runs inside the oil. For decades, a timing belt was a rubber belt on the front of the engine, out in the open air, where you could look at it and change it. Or better yet, a chain that lasted the life of the motor. Then somebody decided to run the belt inside the engine, fully submerged in the oil. They call it a wet belt. Here's the problem with that. Rubber and hot oil were never friends. Over the miles, the oil breaks the belt down, and it starts shedding tiny particles, and those particles get pulled straight to the screen on the oil pump pickup. Clog that screen and the oil stops flowing. Now you've got oil starvation, spun bearings, and on an interference engine, if that belt lets go, the valves and pistons meet and the engine is done. Here's what they won't put in the brochure. They buried a rubber belt in the oil to shave friction and pick up maybe 1% on the fuel economy test. And because it's sealed inside, you can't even inspect it without tearing the front of the engine apart. You'll find it in the Ford 1-liter EcoBoost, the Fiesta, Focus, and Puma, and the same idea in Peugeot and Citroën engines across Europe. Over in the UK, it's become a full-blown scandal, with belts failing on cars barely broken in. The tell is a rattle or a diesel-like clatter from the front of the engine on a cold start that quiets down once the oil warms up. If you hear that, don't wait. The fix is to throw out the factory's leisurely schedule and change that wet belt early, somewhere around every 4 to 5 years or 60,000 miles, not the 100,000 plus they suggest. The belt itself is a 30 to 60 pound part, and a proper wet belt service runs around 500 to 900 pounds. Skip it, and a shed belt takes the whole engine, 3 to 5,000 pounds gone. Quick word before the last few, and this is the big one coming up. If this is putting money back in your pocket, do me a favor and tap subscribe. It's free, it tells the algorithm to show this to more folks who've been lied to, and it keeps these videos coming. Because the next one is a transmission a lot of you already suspect, and you're right too. Number 3. The CVT they sold as maintenance-free. A regular automatic uses real gears. A CVT throws that out and runs a steel belt squeezed between two cone-shaped pulleys, making its heat right there on the belt and pulley contact. The trouble is, the factory cooling on a lot of these can't carry that heat away. So the fluid cooks, the belt starts to slip, and you get a shudder, a whine, and then the transmission drops into limp mode and won't pull. And here's the insult on top of it. Many of these went out the door sealed and labeled maintenance-free, so the fluid that's supposed to be cooling and protecting that belt never gets changed until it's already too late. They won't admit the design runs too hot from the factory. The tell is that they quietly extended warranties and issued bulletins to add an external cooler on the very transmissions they swore were fine. I had a retired hairdresser bring in a Nissan Altima that started shuddering around 90,000 miles and then lost power merging onto the highway. The CVT was cooked. You don't rebuild these like an old automatic, so she was staring at a full replacement, $3,500 to $5,000, on a car barely worth that. That's the exact moment a good person gets pushed into a car payment they never planned for. If you own a CVT, ignore the maintenance-free sticker. Change the fluid with the exact factory spec CVT fluid every 30 to 60,000 miles at $200 to $400 a service. And if there's an add-on cooler available for your model, put one on. Keep it cool and it'll live far longer than they intended. That's 3 of the worst still to go, and I've been promising you the one at the top since the start. Remember, number 1 isn't a belt or a pump or a pulley, it's a single button you press every morning. It costs you nothing to switch off, and I'll show you exactly why it's the one I'd kill first. Number 2, cylinder deactivation. To make a thirsty V8 look thrifty on the test, the maker shuts off half the cylinders under light load using collapsible lifters that cycle on and off all day. Those lifters are the weak point. One sticks or collapses and grinds the cam lobe beneath it flat, and now it's a whole set of lifters and a camshaft. None of it was for you. GM badges it. Active Fuel Management, Chrysler calls it MDS, and it's all there to squeak a big engine past a fuel economy standard. Pull the valve cover on a high-mile 5.3 Silverado or a Hemi and you'll see it. A flattened lifter and a cam lobe worn down to nothing. The fix is a plug-in disabler around $100 that keeps every cylinder firing and stops the wear before it ever starts. Pocket change against a $4,000 to $6,000 lifter and cam job, or $8,000 to $12,000 for a whole new long block. But even that isn't the one I hate most. That one is still sitting right there on your dash. Number 1, Auto Start/Stop. It's that button with the letter A wrapped in a circling arrow. Every time you stop at a light, it kills the engine, and every time you lift off the brake, it fires it back to life. Count the red lights on your run to the store. That's how many extra shutdowns and restarts they built into one short trip every single day. And it isn't there to save your engine or your money. It's there to pass an emissions and fuel economy test, and it quietly hands you the bill. The battery it demands isn't a normal one. It's a special heavy-duty unit that runs $250 to $400 to replace against $120 to $180 for the old kind. And on a turbo, killing a red-hot engine the second you stop is how you bake oil right onto the turbo bearings. For a mile or two, a gallon on a lab test, they made your car restart itself thousands of extra times a year. That is the stupidest feature they ever built. You can switch it off by hand, but most cars forget by morning. A little plug-in module, $30 to $60, remembers for you and keeps it off for good. I laid out the whole step-by-step for killing Auto Start/Stop, the module, and the free workarounds in the video on your screen right now. Click it and I'll walk you through it. Keep these 10 off, serviced, or off your shopping list, and that paid-off Camry or Silverado stays yours for years longer. That's how you make sure the one in your driveway is the last car you ever have to buy.